The sandstorm didn't knock first, it arrived screaming, a shrieking force that devoured everything in its path. Sky light logic and left only chaos in its wake. Vel had exactly 7 seconds to make a decision. The winds were accelerating, the atmosphere ionized with static, in her Nafsut's AI was now reciting an ancient Valadari poem about heroic sacrifices. Great, shut up AIE, Vel snapped, diving into the half-collapsed ravine as the storm roared overhead. Her long ears flattened beneath her hood as grains of scorching sand battered her helmet. Noted, Ori responded calmly, initiating dramatic silence activating we might die mode. Vel rolled her eyes and landed hard against the slab of metal jutting from the canyon wall. Her oxygen levels dipped. The air smelled like burnt quartz. Somewhere in the mess of blowing grit and ruined tech, her navigation screen flickered and coughed up a signal, faint, erratic, and definitely not automated. Not a beacon, not a drone, something alive. She squinted through the storm as her display zoomed in on a patch of sand barely visible beneath the howling wind. A door, half buried, sealed but warm. Shelter, life form detected inside, Ori said, dropping the calm voice and switching to something more useful. Human heat signature. Bell froze. Say that again. Life form inside, human breathing heart rate stable, appears to be watching reruns of something called Friends. A human, impossible, they were extinct, wiped out in the collapse nearly a century ago, when Earth's last transmission ceased and the colonies were dismantled. Vel had grown up on tales of their destruction. Tragic, of course, but distant, mythic, like dragons or honest politicians. Her legs moved before her brain could argue. She scrambled across the last stretch of shifting sand, activated her plasma cutter and sliced open the hatch. The door hissed open with a gust of stale air and warm electric musk. Her suit registered breathable atmosphere. She stepped inside. The lights flickered on, and there he was, human male, alive, holding a steaming mug and staring at her with a flat expression of someone who had just been interrupted during an episode of Interstellar Trivia Night. "You're not my delivery drone," he said. Vel blinked. He looked ordinary, brown hair and disheveled curls, a short beard, broad shoulders under a faded t-shirt that read NASA, not a space archetype, and bare feet planted on metal flooring like he owned gravity. There were wires hanging from the ceiling, makeshift furniture made from scavenged shuttle parts, and what appeared to be a hydroponic garden growing chili peppers under a sun lamp. "No," she said slowly, lowering her cutter. "I'm Vel, lieutenant of the Valadari Outer Crafty Corps." He sipped his drink. "Well, Vel, lieutenant of the Vala, that thing. Welcome to my living room. Sorry about the mess. Didn't expect intergalactic visitors today. You want tea or oxygen?" Bel's brain raced. "You're human. You're not supposed to exist." He grinned. "Neither are honest repair bots, but here we are." Ori whispered in her ear. "He is exhibiting sarcasm. Stay cautious, Kidding," she muttered. He stepped forward, offered his hand. "Jace, been living here for most of my life, born in this bunker raised by a rather dramatic AI named Marvin in the educational database of Earth's golden age. Would have cleaned up if I knew company was coming." Vel looked around. "This is a military shelter. Was now. It's mostly a garden, a library, and a really terrible kitchen. You hungry?" Vel opened her mouth to speak, then felt her knees buckle slightly. Ori shouted warnings about her hydration levels. Jace caught her by the arm. "Okay, that's a yes to oxygen and soup. Let's get you sorted." The next hour passed in a blur of awkward silence, patched up conversation, and rehydrated lentil stew. Vel sat on a crate while Jacis worked a kettle over a humming energy coil, cracking jokes about the galactic news delay and pretending not to stare at her ears. She didn't pretend. She stared openly. "You really don't believe humans are extinct?" she asked eventually. "Oh, I believe it," Jace said, "just didn't Take it personally, I guess. She frowned. You've never left the shelter. He gestured around. I've got chili peppers, solar movies, and about 300 versions of Pride and Prejudice, one with space pirates even. Why leave? Belle almost laughed. You're insane. I prefer independently stable. With a sprinkle of existential flair she chuckled despite herself, then turned serious. My people will come looking. They'll find this place you can't stay hidden. I haven't stayed hidden, he said, meeting her gaze. No one came until you. The words hung in the air heavier than the storm still howling outside. Vel stood brushing off her suit. We need to figure out what this place really is, why it's still powered, why you're still alive. He grinned. If you're offering a team up, I accept under one condition. What? No more cutting through my front door with a plasma saw. She rolled her eyes and started scanning the walls for structural schematics. Fine, next time I'll knock. Appreciate it. It's the little things that make post-apocalyptic hospitality worth it. Outside, the storm howled on, unaware that in a forgotten corner of a dead planet two impossible beings had just shared lentils and sarcasm. The galaxy would never be the same. The storm raged on for another 42 hours, which gave Vel more than enough time to question every decision she'd made in her life. For instance, volunteering for outer sector mapping duty, or trusting her AOI to handle weather forecasting, or most recently, accepting soup from a man who had named his home hydroponic garden Chili Prime. Jace, for his part, behaved like hosting an alien guest was a regular Tuesday. He handed her a clean shirt, human size, baggy on her frame, and a pair of thick socks, which she accepted with mild suspicion and eventual gratitude. The shelter was built to military specs but had long since shed its austerity. Bits of his personality leaked through the cables and consoles. Vel couldn't decide if he was brilliantly resourceful or quietly unhinged. She found him fiddling with a projector salvaged from an old surveillance drone, trying to stabilize a video file. You've got ancient Earth media archives, she asked, eyeing the mess of blinking lights. Sure, some are encrypted, but a lot's in the open. Marvin, my old AI babysitter, had a weird sense of cultural priorities. Lots of historical documentaries, also 5 seasons of Galactic Gladiators. Go wild. Vel raised a brow. You were raised by an AI in ancient reality shows, explains a lot, doesn't it? The projector buzzed to life, casting a flickering image of a young woman in a flight suit giving a speech. Earth seal behind her, audio warped with time. Vel leaned closer. The emblem was one she recognized from outdated interstellar briefings, one of the last Earth exploratory fleets before the collapse. Who is she? Vel asked. Jay shrugged. No idea. She was in Marvin's do not delete folder, which, knowing him, means she was important or had excellent dramatic music. Vel glanced around the shelter, unease coiling in her gut. This place isn't just a shelter, it's a vault. Well, yeah, Jay said. I always assumed it was more than a doomsday bunker. I found parts of the facility I can't even access. Marvin always said, some doors are better left unopened until the plot demands it. He was a real joker. She sighed. Your AI talk like a narrator. Oh yeah, he thought he was in a story. Always ended messages with to be continued. I miss that bucket of bolts. Vel ran her hand along the smooth curve of a sealed door embedded in the wall. No keypad, no handle, just a blank panel. Her suit scanned the metal. No readings. She muttered, whatever's behind here, it's locked down tight. Jace joined her, holding 2 mugs of tea. It used to make this humming noise when I walked past. Then it stopped. I figure it's where they kept the coffee reserves, and once those were gone, it just gave up on life. She sipped. This is surprisingly decent. Secrets in the space basil, he said with a wink. Despite herself, Vel smiled. The following day, Vel initiated a deeper scan of the shelter. Her crafter tools Compact and powerful, folded out from a slim wrist panel like a blooming flower. Of data, tiny hovering drones spread out, mapping the quarters, searching for unusual power signatures and, most importantly, verifying the presence of any long-range transmitters to her irritation. The results were odd. There's an active transmitter buried under the structure, she told Jace as she reviewed the findings. Deep power flow indicates it's been receiving but not sending. Jace raised an eyebrow. So someone might have been listening. Vel nodded. Exactly. You weren't as alone as you thought. He sat back, face unusually serious. Any idea who could be? A Veladari archive drone could be. Pirates, could be a remnant of human tech. Please, not pirates, I've read about them. They don't shower. Vel ignored the joke. If the transmitter logs receive data, I might be able to extract it. Well, I hope. It comes with a manual. My last attempt at hacking nearly set the kitchen on fire. She frowned. What were you trying to do? Build a blender. Vel rubbed her temples. You tried to hack a military database to make smoothies. Listen, you haven't tasted my desert date cactus cocktail. Later that evening they stood in front of the buried console room. Vel connected her gear, bypassing the old encryption with a Validary override key. The screen buzzed to life, displaying years of logs, incoming signals, and encrypted packets, faint and spaced years apart. Someone had been pinging the shelter. Carefully she translated the headers and her eyes widened. These are command frequencies, she said. Breath-catching, top level, but no records of any missions in this region. Jace leaned over. So either someone's lying or someone lost this place on purpose. Vel's mind spun. What if this shelter was meant to disappear, hidden after the collapse? Maybe not all humans were meant to vanish, just be forgotten. They stared at the blinking logs for a long moment. Then Jay spoke. So you think I'm a lost legacy? I think, Vel said slowly, you're a living contradiction in a galaxy that doesn't know what to do with your existence. He grinned. Great, that means I'll definitely survive the next chapter. Before she could respond, a red light flashed on the console. Proximity alert. Vel's blood turned cold. Something's approaching. Please let it be a pizza drone, Jace muttered, but it wasn't. Vel traced the signal. A ship entering low orbit, its transponder echoing Veladari military protocols. Not her survey team, not scheduled. Someone else, someone watching. They've been monitoring this site, she whispered, and now they know I found you. Jace stared at the screen. So what now? Vel stood, her voice steady. Now we prepare and maybe hide your blender. I regret nothing. Outside the wind was dying, but inside a new storm was brewing. One carried not by sand but by secrets, choices, and the weight of forgotten truths that refused to stay buried. The ship descended with all the subtlety of a falling refrigerator. Vel and Jace watched from the ridge above the shelter, both wearing cloaks woven with anti-answer fibers. Jace looked like a dramatic hermit. Vel looked like someone moments away from either starting a rebellion or declaring herself queen. That's not Ari survey vessel, she muttered, zooming in with her ocular scanner. Too many weapons, too few identification markers. That's a black ops ship. Jace chewing on a ration bar that claimed to be roast chicken flavor offered a helpful observation. I'd say black ops is a little ominous, but at least they didn't crash. Progress. Vel lowered her scope. This isn't a joke. Whoever they are, they're not here to talk, they're here to silence. Well, Jace said with mock brightness, we could always greet them with cookies and laser turrets. Vel actually considered it. They retreated to the shelter where Vel began rerouting power to the structure's passive defense systems. She worked with swift, precise gestures, her long ears twitching occasionally. Jace had learned this meant she was focused or irritated, or both. He sat nearby, playing with a circuit board and trying to modify one of his helper bots to Mimic Idari scout droid it mostly just. Beeped angrily at him. I don't get it, he said. Why would your people cover up this shelter? It's not like it's harboring forbidden tech or super weapons. Vel glanced up from her console. It's harboring you. That might be worse. Ouch. That was oddly flattering. She hesitated, then spoke more softly. Humanity wasn't just lost, Jace. After the collapse, the galaxy needed a reason, something to blame. The stories shaped humans into monsters of ambition, chaos incarnate. But you're well, sorry to disappoint the myth. She smiled faintly. You're not a disappointment, you're a disruption. The shelter's lights flickered. External sensors picked up movement. 3 figures in full-body exosuits approaching from the south, moving with precision. Vel stiffened. They're here. Jace grabbed a toolkit and an old energy rifle. Okay, so what's the plan? Hide in a closet and hope they forget we exist. We lure them in, Vel said, voice cool. This place is filled with old systems, doors, airlocks, climate controls. If I can route them through the central corridor, we can trap them long enough to scan their data cores. Jace blinked. That's your plan? Trick them with architecture? Vel raised an eyebrow. Have a better idea? Jace looked at the rifle, looked at the doorway, then at her. I mean, I was going to suggest singing really loudly and hoping they were tone sensitive there. Not. I checked the trap worked better than either expected. Vel triggered a sequence of timed magnetic locks as the intruders entered the outer corridor. 1 got through, the other 2 were sealed behind a reinforced door. The third charged into the main chamber where Jace was waiting with a plasma welder and a bucket of sand. Say hello to my dusty friend, he yelled, launching the sand into the exosuit's vent ports. The agent staggered, coughing through their comms. Vel disarmed the intruder with clinical efficiency, then accessed their helmets. Uplink within seconds. She had a full list of mission directives and the decrypted orders chilled her blood. They were told to retrieve any active biological anomaly. She said, you dead or alive? Well, that's not very neighborly. She pulled off the agent's helmet. The woman underneath was Veladari, her expression flat and emotionless. Vel frowned. These aren't just military, these are from Obscura Protocol. Jace raised a hand. Okay, I'm going to need you to pause and explain what sounds like a very ominous sci-fi band name. Obscura Protocol, Vel said, was a black project during the collapse, officially disbanded. Unofficially, they clean up history with plasma. Jace took a long, deep breath. Awesome, so I'm being hunted by time janitor. She didn't laugh, but she did smirk. Vel tied the intruder and jammed her comms. They had minutes, maybe an hour, before reinforcements arrived. She handed Jace a data chip. This contains proof you exist, genetic logs, environmental data, everything. If something happens to us, this has to reach the outer colonies. Jace took it reluctantly. If you're about to make a big heroic speech, I should warn you, I'm terrible with goodbyes. There won't be any goodbyes, but just in case. She paused, then kissed his forehead gently, her long fingers brushing his cheek. You're not a monster, Jace, you're hope. He blinked. You kissed me like I was a sacred relic. You're rarer than one. A sudden quake rocked the ground. A new ship, a heavier one, was descending fast. Multiple heat signatures bloomed across the horizon. They're bringing reinforcements, Vel whispered. Jace check the power levels. We can't hold this place, not with what we've got. Vel stared at the encrypted door, the one that never opened, the one Marvin had warned about. She marched to it, placed her palm against the blank panel and spoke the override phrase, Legacy Alpha. The door hissed behind it. Was a cryogenic vault, dozens of them. Vel stepped inside, eyes wide. Jace followed and stopped cold inside the vault. Preserved in stasis were humans, not just him, dozens, hundreds sleeping untouched. Vel turned to him, voice trembling. This was never just a shelter, this was an ark. Jay stared at the frozen faces. So I'm Not the last number, but you're the first. To wake up, he turned to her. What now? We protect them, Vel said. We make sure the galaxy knows the truth. He cracked his knuckles. Then let's write a new chapter. Outside, the storm gathered again, but this time they weren't running from it. They were walking into it with purpose. And a very confused helper bot named Kevin, still trying to be a scout droid. Jace had never imagined waking up in a cryogenic ark to the sound of Vel arguing with a sentient kettle. I told you you're not a tactical assistant. You're an appliance, she snapped. The kettle, nicknamed Skits by Jace because of its wildly erratic AI behavior, responded in a regal accent. Madam, I have logged more kitchen engagements than most battlefield drones. I am steeped in combat readiness. Did you just make a tea pun? Jace croaked as he sat up on the ark floor. Absolutely, Skits replied. I was brewing up to it. Vel sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. I regret restoring that backup personality core. They were in the innermost chamber of the ark now, an ancient stasis hub beneath the sand, sealed for over a century after they had fought off the Obscura Protocol strike team with traps, misdirection, and a remarkably aggressive desert lizard they named Sarge. Jason Vel had initiated the next phase of their plan, revival. Not all the cryopods were stable, but a dozen had survived intact. 12 humans, engineers, scientists, civilians, people from the time before the collapse, the last flickers of Earth's dying flame. Jace, once convinced he was a solitary remnant, now found himself overwhelmed by the sudden responsibility of being a sort of post-apocalyptic camp counselor. So what do we tell them? He asked Vel as she monitored one of the waking pods. The truth, she said, that they were forgotten, that they matter, that they've been given a second chance. Jace nodded slowly. And what do I tell them when they ask who I am? She smiled. Tell them you're the one who waited, and tell them the universe is more ridiculous than they remember. The first human to wake was an old woman named Dr. Amani Rousseau, a biomechanical engineer with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. Upon regaining consciousness, she took one look at Jace, then Vel, then at Skits, who offered her tea and said, well, this isn't my lab. Did the grant go through, or did the world end? Jace grinned. Yes. In the days that followed, the shelter transformed. The once buried facility became a seedling of hope. Vel rerouted old power cores to run life support for the reawakening humans. Jace led repairs with the help of the revived engineers. Marvin, the shelter AI now fully operational, resumed control over the habitat systems, though he insisted on greeting everyone with haiku for reasons no one quite understood. Vel occasionally disappeared to scout the surface, returning with salvage tech supplies and once a glowing mushroom she refused to explain. So it's not toxic? Jace asked skeptically as she placed it in the shelter's arboretum. It's spiritually curious, she replied cryptically, then wandered off humming a song that didn't match any Earth genre. Despite the tension of their precarious situation, technically fugitives from the Valari Imperium, unofficial protectors of a lost human lineage, the atmosphere in the shelter was one of absurd optimism. And Jace changed where he once cracked jokes to avoid silence. Now he joked because he could afford to. He wasn't surviving alone anymore. He had people, a purpose, and possibly a very stubborn, long-eared alien partner who never let him forget to eat breakfast. You've stopped counting the days on the wall, Vel observed one morning as they sat overlooking the sands from a retractable dome panel. I don't need to anymore, Jay said. Days matter when you're waiting for something. Now I'm building something. Vel tilted her head. You're not the same man I met in the storm. Jace chuckled while the men you met lived in a box with a sarcastic AI and thought the universe ended a century ago. Now he lives in a slightly bigger box and knows The universe is way weirder, she looked. Away, I'm glad you're still here, he nudged her. Vel H, if we survive this, if the Veladari don't erase us, do you think we could build something bigger, not just a shelter, maybe a haven for more like me? She didn't answer right away, then she whispered, yes, and I want to help build it. It wasn't romantic in a traditional sense, but it was the beginning of something sacred in the crossing of two vanished peoples, one nearly extinct, the other burdened by legacy they had forged. Something that neither of them knew how to name. The transmission came weeks later, a signal from one of Vel's old Veldari contacts, encoded, cautious and trembling with hidden intent. There are others, the message said, Veldari who believe the old laws are wrong, who think humanity deserve better. They're watching, waiting. Vel's eyes shimmered. Jace raised an eyebrow. So we're not just rogue survivalists anymore, we're a movement. She nodded. We might be the start of one. Jace exhaled. Great, I always wanted to accidentally lead a revolution. Do we get jackets? She grinned. Only if they're fireproof. Behind them the revived humans gathered, repairing, laughing, arguing, building. Marvin read poetry over the intercom. Skits hosted tea parties. The desert vast and golden shimmered like a future not yet written, and Jace, once the last human, now stood among the first of a new beginning, not forgotten, not alone, alive.